to another episode in the First Crusade battle series for Medieval 2 Total War. And we have marched on now from the Battle of Dorylaeum to the Siege of Antioch. Now, the Siege of Antioch is quite a long siege. It goes on for 8 months, and there's quite a lot of stuff going on during this, but we tried to sort of set up a battle that would represent it the best. So some of the fighting will not be represented, but most of the important parts will be represented. So we're looking here at the Crusader army marching up. You might notice that the Turkish are not actually manning the wall, and this is because that they managed to bribe the guards controlling one of the gates, and they bribed him so they were able to slip through, and was sort of symbolized they sort of made a sort of fake attack on it, similar to what the Byzantines did at the Siege of Nicaea, when they did sort of a fake attack and were let in. And we're gonna do a similar thing right here, where Beaumont.
Walls are no match for valor and force of arms.
Sure. Yeah. So they managed to pay one of the guards, an Armenian by the name of Firuz. I'm not entirely sure if I pronounced that right. But he was sort of paid back, sort of the karma on his treachery for letting these guys in. When the Crusaders got in and they started to slaughter everyone in town, one of the persons they killed was his brother. But anyways, that's kind of late in the siege. But I couldn't really show the prolonged siege of just the Crusaders holding up around town, trying to starve the city out. Now, it should be actually said that for most of the 8 months which they sieged Antioch, they weren't actually completely able to siege it, and so a few of the gates were left unguarded. So the inhabitants of the city and the army inside of it, or the garrison inside of it, were actually able to resupply with food for I believe at least half the time which they besieged it, and besieged it for 8 months, between late October 1097 to March, where I believe this attack takes place, if I'm not completely mistaken. And for about half that time they weren't actually able to properly siege it. And also they were sort of aware, as they got to the city, as the Crusaders actually got to the city, they realized they couldn't properly siege it, and Raymond IV actually suggested that they should go straight on ahead and charge it. But both Godfrey and Beaumont found that would be quite reckless, and they wouldn't be able to take the city that way. So they decided. Also, they got input from the Byzantine general that were following them as an advisor, and he sort of guided them.
We have captured the enemy's walls.
Yes, there we go. They've captured the wall. As I was saying, the Byzantine general actually advised them on how to siege it, because most of the places that were taken, Antioch was a castle that was actually built by Justinian I, or from that era. It wasn't. I'm not entirely sure if it was built directly by him, but it was built during that era. And we can see here now that the Crusaders are starting to flush in. We're gonna have a fight going on here quite soon. So they opted to siege out the place, and the inhabitants of the castle actually got, I guess they had some spies or some knowledge of this, and they realized that the Crusaders weren't gonna attack the castle, and they couldn't properly sieged it. Plus they had quite a few. All in all, there's going to be 3 reinforcement armies coming to relieve the city, and all of them getting smashed by the Crusaders. But during the entire siege, the inhabitants of the castle sallied forth quite a few times out of the city to attack the Crusaders while they lay in siege of the castle. But so eventually, after defeating 2 reinforcements army that came before the third and the last one. First, I believe it was Jakar of Damascus who came, and a Crusader army of about 20,000 were out foraging for supplies quite a way far from the castle of Antioch, and they sort of happened to run onto him, find him there, and they took to battle and they defeated him. And after that we also had Ridwan of Aleppo come to aid, but he also was defeated by the Crusaders. But it was quite a precarious situation for the Crusaders, and as the 3rd reinforcement army under Karbugha, I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it, a sort of a bigger lord that came from what is today, I believe, Iraq. He was the Sultan of Mosul, I believe, and he came with quite a large army, and the Crusaders got hold of information about this, and this one would surely crush them. They couldn't withstand this attack of the 3rd one if they sort of, as they were sieging the castle at this point. So they wouldn't be able to take that on while they weren't in control of the town. So they had to devise some way to get into the city and attack the inhabitants. And what they did then was that Beaumont managed to get in contact with the treacherous Feroz, which controlled a part of the. It was an Armenian who controlled part of the wall, and he offered him titles and money to let the Crusaders in, which he agreed to do, which of course turned out quite badly for him, since during the attack, or as they attack into the city, they actually slaughter his brother. They slaughter quite a lot of people, even though, as I said, these places quite often, only a few years ago, were under control of the Byzantines, and most of the population were Eastern Christians. Although the Crusaders didn't mind killing them. They didn't mind killing, really, they didn't discriminate against anyone, they killed basically everyone. So they went through and they slaughtered through town. But there was quite a heavy fight on the streets. But finally the forces of the garrison was pushed back into the inner castle here. Now we can actually go ahead and talk a bit about what's going on here. Just as you could see in the beginning, there were so many men that I feared an attack here. Plus we've got these Naftatoons, which gonna rout these 2 units attacking. So going full on there wasn't. You can just see the devastation here by the Naftatoons. And all the Crusaders that fall by that. So going at full-on attack there was never gonna happen. So we decide instead on flanking, which we've done here. We've got 2 units of dismounted feudal knights fighting against this.
Press onward and break the spirit of his army.
Yeah, it's there's another place where we can go through over there. As you can see here as well, we've got some Naftatunes, but they're not able to effectively throw their grenades into these crusaders. Maybe if we had put them a little bit here on the side, they would have been able to more readily throw grenades into here. And over here on the left we've got heavy cavalry going in against some Afghan javelin men, and we also have 2 units of knights moving here to swing in around and swing in and do hammer and anvil charges here in the back of the enemies. But this is kind of a heavy fight, and so far the casualty rate has actually been higher for the crusaders rather than the enemies. So there's quite a few of troops dead. Here we had a fight with where the enemy general, the garrison general, went in to fight, but he was outnumbered by the Crusader Knights, although the Crusader Knights took quite a few casualties. And we can see here we almost ring these guys in this place, but they were relieved as these javelin men come back to aid them, and trying not to get him trapped, we were forced to withdraw those troops. And then instead we go in here and I make a charge on the Naftatunes, which fails, and they break and rout, and that's the single knight that managed to survive that. At the same time here you can see that he still has quite a lot of troops here, since we've got quite a lot of troops here, but the problem is that we're quite over here. We've done quite a large amount. We've inflicted quite a large amount of damage on his units, and these knights have only lost. This unit has only lost 5 men, and this one has lost 13. While you can see the devastation here on the military spearmen. So they would really need the support of javelin men or the Naftatunes. And we can see here some feudal knights going in for charging the Afghan javelin men. And there goes the charge against the Naftatunes, which fails. The knights rout, and most of them are going to be cut down. Unfortunately with medieval, it's kind of sluggish, and the battles drag on for quite some time. But it allows for quite... I think we're about to actually break them here. It looks as though we're about to break them. The Naftatunes started getting managed to throw the grenades, so I do the thing where you charge, you tell the men to run straight through the enemy line, so I tried to push my knights through. So I contacted with the Naftatunes to force them to stop throwing the grenades and instead contacting melee. And I guess he realized, so he's withdrawing the Naftatunes. And here comes some new fresh spearmen in to aid in the fight, and that surely is going to be able to turn the tide right here, and we're going to be able to sandwich in the troops here. Realizing that he's losing over here, I guess he decided to charge through here. And we get up with this massive blob. Unfortunate for him, I do not believe he's able to effectively use the Naftatunes in this battle, since they're not able to throw the grenades. And that's gonna be he's not going to be able to get the sort of devastating attack that he needs, or with the Nafta-tunes, and he's redrawing them all the way back here, which they can't be used, or they can't throw in grenades. They might be out of grenades, I'm not entirely sure. And we can see over here the Nafta-tunes have been able to throw a few grenades, but I've been keeping on pressing my knights through, so I'll be able to go up here to the Nafta-tunes, and my knights have started to cut them down quite readily. And since the Nafta-tunes are still set on throwing the grenades, they don't actually stop to fight the knight. And now we can see he threw it right in the face of the knight, but he also sort of burnt his friend by doing that. And here we go, one of these units of knights had enough. Too many Nafta-tunes and too hard of fighting, so they're running. Unfortunately for them, they're running into the reinforcements here. Some Turkish javelin men moving to reinforce the other side. So you can see there's quite a lot. It's a heavy fight, and there's heavy casualties on both sides. Although the Turkish, or as you can see right here, the Turkish men have lost quite a few more against the heavily armored crusaders. Although the percentage of killed are roughly equal, 31% to 29%. But the crusaders are starting to be able to turn in and come and surround the Turkish force. They might actually have been able to, I think they managed to be able to use the Nafta-tunes right now, because I can see a lot of these men now being redrawn from the fight, since the Nafta-tunes have started throwing the grenades into the fray. And here the Crusaders decide we're gonna retreat straight into the Turks. Decided that wasn't the best idea, so they turned around. But you can see the quite fat troop that were fighting here before. Oh, here comes the knights again. Seem they can't find the way out of town, or they feel like they want to be taken prisoner by the Turks. And right here he does a gamble, sending his Nafta-tunes up to throw grenades, but they get caught in melee fight. And as the other knights, oh, we can see here that the Afghan men, which mostly held the right flank here of the Turkish army, has now routed. And we've got some general's bodyguard coming in here, and it looks as though this entire unit of crusaders is going to be able to swing around and be able to encircle this army. And most of these Afghan javelin men are now falling back into the city. But given that these guys, the Crusaders, have lost quite a few men, we might just quickly go outside and take a look at what is the reinforcement army from Karbala, which stays out here. So after we've finished with those guys in there, we're gonna have to go out and we're gonna have to face this big army, just so we're aware of that. So trying to minimize our losses as much as possible. The Nafta-tunes of course did quite heavy damage, but we're now able to successfully encircle the Turkish forces, and they're about to rout, and we've got the knights coming in as well, ready to do hammer and anvil charges. At the same time the Turkish archers have stopped, while the Crusader crossbowmen are still going strong, firing arrows into the fray. And just before the Neftatunes get to throw the grenades, the knights come in, and it causes a chain rout, and we can see this entire force now is trying to get into the inner citadel of the town. So historically the Crusader army never was able to break the inner citadel. Instead it took this outer town, looted and plundered, and then they laid the inner castle within siege. But then Karbala of course came, and they realized they couldn't fight them on two fronts like that, so they had to go out of the castle to confront Karbala. But here we can see that the fight here within the castle has ended, as the Turks now frantically try to get into the inner sanctity of the castle. There's not a lot of troops in here. We got a single unit of Neftatun, and quite on their own they could probably not withstand the Crusaders if they tried. But in the sort of historical context of the battle, we were not allowed to go in and capture it. We had to go out and fight Karbala. So we're trying to move up our men here into position. Now historically they had about 5 days, I believe, to prepare against Karbala before they move out. But we can just stand there and wait for our troops. So we're gonna move out and fight Karbala, even though most of our troops are tired. But what this was actually part of during the Crusades, they had a lot of trouble with the resupplement of the troops, and they quite often starved. And so during these 5 days they ran out of food again, so they started to starve, and they sort of needed a boost. And it was conflicted at the time as well, but there was this low-level monk, which by some was called a charlatan, who believed he'd seen what's it called? A vision by God that there was some holy relic stored within the church. So they started tearing up the floor in there. They also started probably digging a bit here and there all over the castle, or all over the town rather. So they started digging, and he'd said to have found the Holy Lands while he was digging. But quite a few of the Crusader generals didn't believe him, because quite a few of them, I believe, had actually been to, as they've been to Constantinople, they had been in Constantinople and actually seen their relic of the Holy Lands. So they thought that this is clearly the work of a charlatan, and this guy's a fraud. But nevertheless, he found that, yeah, I should probably mention this, that if you're not that familiar with the Christian stories, the lance, which I'm talking about, is the lance that basically, when Jesus was crucified, the Roman guard that was guarding him, or just as they had nailed him up on the cross, and was standing there guarding him, he got a bit tired of waiting. I don't know if he had to pick up his kids at daycare or something, but he decided that, oh, I can't wait this long, I have other stuff to do. So he took his spear and he actually stuck it in Jesus to sort of quicken the process and kill him, so he could get on with his day, as it were. And that is the Holy Lance. Not sure if it actually killed Jesus, but sort of in the myth about Jesus, or the stories about him, this Roman soldier pierced him with his lance, and that became the Holy Lance. And I'm not sure more to say about that, but that they said they found that, and I guess to some of the Crusaders it symbolized, it reaffirmed their conviction that this was a holy mandate of God, that they were supposed to go here and kill people. Also, as I said, quite a lot of them didn't believe him, and to prove that it was the truth, it wasn't like he then tried to set up providence for it or anything like that. It was more like, I'm gonna prove that I'm so confident in that this is the Holy Lance that I'm going to walk on fire, and the anger of God should protect me from the flames. So what they did was they set up this like a big I'm not sure exactly how they did it, but they sort of walled off an area and they put it up with lots of flaming coal, and he walked through that and he got quite terribly burnt and he died 12 days afterwards. But that sort of I guess in some ways for the medieval people proved that he was telling the truth, or at least that he was convinced enough himself that it was the truth. Although quite a few of them were still quite skeptical of it, especially the higher ups in the sort of religious standing. If we go back to the Battle of Dorlem, we had the papal legate Depuis, Ademar Depuis, and he was quite pissed because, of course, he's the highest sort of religious person on this crusade, and the fact that he didn't know about this sort of pissed him off. And so I fast forward a bit, so we got into the action here, and as I said, Karbala arrived here to relieve the besieged garrison, and the Crusaders, who was already starving again, didn't have a choice but to move out of the castle and fight him. So at first Karbala actually withdrew back a bit to drag the Crusaders into more rough ground, while pelting them with arrows throughout the battle, but it was quite a devastating defeat in the end for Karbala. Although since this sort of battle series isn't supposed to be like a historical recreation, at this point I was, since I am this left flank right here, I was actually quite concerned that we were gonna lose. And if you can see here at the percentage of killed, we have lost 40% of our men, and now we also have to fight a completely fresh Turkish army here, and also quite a lot of casualties. You can see this entire line is very tired, or also some exhausted men. Also, I lost quite a few of my knights, which I had hoped to be using in this battle to send off these horse archers, and I'm left with only my general. But here we can see the battle starting to commence, and we're moving into position to attack the Turks. And I'm moving in here on the left to sort of do a hammer and anvil together with this force. But I sort of time it wrong, so I go in before the other force. I still go in on the side, so they take quite a few casualties, but not as much as had they been already fighting these knights. And here the battle commences And we're fighting all along the line here. A bit of a lackluster response from the Turks. I think he's trying to maintain his line, although this area right here, this unit of spear militia was completely routed. Although we've got a similar unit here standing up against the knights, so I'm not sure what exactly happened there. There was no intervention by any other unit, so I'm not entirely sure how it came that they routed. I was quite surprised actually while I was playing the battle. But at the same time we can see here that quite a few of the crusaders are running as well, and we've got another unit over there. So it's not completely sure thing that the crusaders will win, and we can see here the casualty rates are going up quite high. Enemies killed 62% while the allies are 51%, so we're still in a lead of about 10%, but that only shows of course the actual amount of men on the battle, but that can quickly change with charges and men routing. The balance can quickly switch, and the Turks still control quite a lot of cavalry. I believe they have one general's unit, which will help.
Only half of our force remains.
Yeah, as you can see there. And I believe they've got one unit of Armenians, one unit of general's bodyguard, and 2 units of forts archers.
Only half the enemy force remains.
So they're gonna be able to quite devastatedly attack my flank. My flank is clearly the weaker one. I took a lot of damage in the town, while the right flank here is doing much better, and have actually turned. And
our foolish general has thrown his life away, and perhaps our chances of victory with it.
And there goes my general, who was killed during a charge of some spearmen, I think. Oh, he's actually over here. So he was killed while charging the spearmen that came back from routing. And I'm not entirely sure which guy my general was supposed to be, but it might have been Beaumont or Godfrey that were the 2 sort of main generals in here. Oh, so it's looking like it's going pretty well for us, but there's still quite a lot of Turks, and they still have the missile cavalry. They might have want to taken a sort of different approach to the battle.
Winning the battle. If we continue like this, we will smash the enemy.
And the fight is sort of desperate, and it's a bit here and there. When I played, it looked a lot worse. When we actually played this, it looked a lot worse, as I recall it. And I remember that I'm gonna lose all my men, so in the end I'm not gonna have any men left. So it's only gonna be my ally left on the field. But right now it doesn't look that bad, but you can see a lot of these small units could easily be routed by cavalry charges. And a lot of them are being routed by cavalry charges. Plus the fact that we've got almost a full unit of missile cavalry riding around here, harassing our troops. And the difference in men killed aren't that different. It's still about a 10% difference.
If we continue like this, we will smash the enemy.
And the Turkish general Kerbala is still fighting with his bodyguard here, although he's down to 7 men. But he will fight on to the very end in this battle. And he's getting supported here by the some javelin men. It's actually 2 units. No, it's actually 1 unit. It looked like 2 units, but they were sort of spread out weirdly. And they're sort of gonna drag these very tired crusaders on while they throw the spears, and these guys pelt them with arrows. So it's gonna whittle these guys down. At the same time, my ally is regrouping his force, and we can see that a few of them are actually quite unscathed, 84 units, and we've got 108 over here. But they're very tired, and they've. But luckily for him, he's still got quite a few of these crossbowmen left, which is going to be able to effectively
our men have fought long and are becoming tired.
Shoot down the missile cavalry. In that, I think it's about it. I sort of want to see when the Turkish general goes down, so what I'll do is I'll cut and then we'll go back and we'll end it once the Turkish general makes his final charge. It's gonna be only himself, as I recall it, going in for a charge and fighting to the very end. So we'll go back and we'll show that. But this ends up quite historical with heavy losses on both sides, and Crusader victory. And here he is fighting to the very end. It's only him left in his unit.
Our men have slain the Saracen general.
But there he goes down.
His men running back to the desert.
And that becomes the victory for the Crusader army.